Oh, hey there. It's been a while, you ambitious dentist you. I know, you've been wondering where I've been. I know there's been plenty of dinner conversations between dentists at night saying, man, I wonder where John the VanHorn CPA, ABV, why he stopped recording the podcast. I'm sure somewhere out there in the great wild, there's a child just softly weeping at night thinking, man, Start Your Dental Practice was such a good podcast. I wish it would come back. Have no fear, I'm back, and hopefully I'm going to be a little bit more consistent with content moving forward. So in this, the first episode of the newly minted Tooth and Coin podcast, we're going to be talking about three things. So we're going to talk about number one, what the heck is this podcast and what is it going to be? I'm also going to include what my kind of sneaky ulterior motive is for investing my time into this content because, as a content creator, there's always some type of a motive. Two, I'm going to talk about what this podcast isn't going to be because that's just as important as what it is going to be. And third, I'm going to include what I'd accomplish if I could wave a magic wand with Tooth and Coin as a whole. So anyway, buckle up and it's good to be back. So before I get into all that, I really want to talk about where I've been. So Start Your Dental Practice ended 4 or 5 years ago. Tooth and Coin's last episode was 3 years ago. By the way, the last episode of that was really good, if I do say so myself. It was an interview with a dentist who had bought his own practice for the first time. And that guy's doing really well still. So go check out that podcast if you haven't. It's really good. Since then, the CPA firm Tooth and Coin has over doubled in size. That means that I had to take a step back from content creation and really focus on delivering the high quality of services that I want to make sure that I give to our clients, as well as just bringing in higher levels of talent inside of my firm and working on my own leadership skills in order to be able to make sure that we can bring in a great team that can help out our great clients and just deliver really high quality service. Now, has that been perfect? No, there's definitely been bumps in the road. Are we still trying to do better? Yeah, absolutely. One of our core values in the firm is continuous self-improvement. And that core value comes from my kind of obsessiveness over being an optimizer. So ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with this concept called min-maxing in video games. It's like my favorite thing to do. If you're not one of the cool kids and don't know what min-maxing is, it's basically just using math to figure out the optimal setup for things. So just to illustrate this, in junior high and high school, I'd spend most of my school days calculating optimal builds for video games. One game that I would play in particularly that I spent a ton of time on was this Gemstones 3 game. And it was a text-only multi-user dungeon called a MUD. And it was a game that cost $7 a month to play. Back then, that was kind of unheard of to have a subscription to do these things. But yeah, that's how much I loved it, is I paid more money than what it was worth for this text-only thing. So I would sit in class all day long and just build out these spells and skills and weapons and use math to calculate the best ones to do in different situations and things like that. I bet I looked like Charlie Day in that meme where he's in front of the board, he's got the crazy eyes of pointing to things. I'm pretty sure that's what I looked like. But anyway, I loved doing that. It was my passion. And I'm sure that the girls were real impressed with it in high school. So I bring that same passion to Tooth and Coin and the services that we do every day. And I had to focus on the CPA side of things instead of the content side. So that's really the short of it. I've just been focusing on making sure our CPA firm's awesome. So why come back to content creation now? Well, to be frank, there's just a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Content creation is an effective way to broadcast that information. There's just not much more of an ulterior motive than that. So yeah, that's it. And that's where I've been. So let's talk about what's going to be in this podcast. So first of all, we're going to talk a lot about the financial analysis side of dental practice ownership. I'm going to try to make these concepts as digestible as possible because I know it's complex sometimes. Sometimes people haven't been educated on this information. So I'm going to try to make it as relevant and as easy to understand as possible. That's going to be a big meat of what we talk about. We're also going to be a platform for our listeners to learn from our 400 clients that are dental practice owners. So that's going to be lessons in both successes as well as failures, because both of those are important when you try to learn what's working for other people as well as what's not. Third, I want to be a resource for actionable strategies. There's just a lot of fluff that's out there. And I want to really talk about the strategies and information that actually grow businesses and increase profits and things like that. And of course, we're going to talk about tax stuff as well. So don't worry about that. We're going to do that. I'm going to be reacting to both the good and bad content that's in this industry. Believe me, I have a lot to say about some of that stuff. And finally, we're occasionally going to have guests on. Most of the time, this is going to be self-hosted just because I have a lot to say, but we will have other guests on from time to time if I can find someone who I think has a good thing to say about whatever piece of the industry I'm wanting to kind of further explore if I don't feel like I'm a good person to talk about that thing. So What is this podcast not going to be? One, it's not going to be just boring lectures on like the economic theory of service-based businesses or some snooze fest like that. I ain't nobody got time for that, and I ain't going to do it either. I'm only going to do stuff that I think is engaging and relevant and fun to talk about. There's no reason to do the other stuff. Now, there will be some educational pieces of it, of course, but I'm going to try to make it as interesting as possible. And I do want to touch on the fact that one of the big challenges about content creation is you can't make every episode super relevant for everyone in that market. So there may be some episodes that you just want to skip, and that's fine. But I do hope that the ones that you do listen to are going to be helpful and hopefully have some fun with it as well. Two, this is not going to be just a sales pitch for Tooth and Coin, the CPA firm. I'm going to try to focus this content on making the podcast as great as it can be. Now, will the firm be the sponsor for the podcast? I think I should probably figure out what I'm going to do about sponsors. It's a thing now, and it feels weird to me to take a sponsor, but at the same time, I am taking time away from the firm in a way to do this. So I should probably have Tooth and Coin be the sponsor. I don't know, let me know what you think. Type in the comments if you're on YouTube or something like that, and just let me know what you think about if that sponsorship thing's kind of weird or not. Or should I just not worry about it? So let me know. I'd be interested to hear what everyone's thoughts are on that, because it's kind of a different world now than 3 to 5 years ago on the podcast side of things. The third thing this is not going to be is it's not going to be a one-way conversation. So like one of the best elements of content today is it allows for so much more engagement than it used to. I definitely want to get like a Facebook group or a community software thing going, but I haven't been able to get it up and running just yet. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of figuring out and optimization, which I like to really overanalyze. So be on the lookout for that. It's definitely on the roadmap. It's not something that's ready today, but it's something that I really want to get going, because being able to discuss the content is just so much more helpful than just listening to it. The information's great, but man, action, it's just a chef's kiss type of a thing. It's just so amazing. Fourth, this is not going to be a replacement for financial advice. I'm not your CPA. Maybe I am. I don't know. If you're listening to this in your client, I'm sorry, that didn't apply to you. But even if I am your CPA, listen to specific advice from your CPA, not CPA advice that's given en masse to a whole bunch of people. Those are the 4 things that this podcast is not going to be. And I'm going to try to keep up with these things and revisit them from time to time, just to make sure that I'm actually doing what I'm saying I originally set out to do. So in terms of like the vision for Tooth and Coin as a whole, the podcast, CPA firm, everything together, obviously want the CPA firm to be amazing and be high quality, high value. I'd really like for Tooth and Coin as a whole just to be a community. Now, obviously we'd love to be able to service a big portion of that community with the CPA side of things, but I know this industry is just full of just such amazing people. And I want to be a part of helping those people navigate this difficult journey that is entrepreneurship, leadership, financial management, and all the things that go along with that. There's just a whole lot more to it than just CPA stuff that I want to help be a part of and be a part of the story of. Now, I have no illusions of grandeur to think that I'm going to be like the penultimate person for this, or that when it comes to all these topics, that I'm the person that has all the answers. But I do think that a community could be really helpful in figuring a lot of these things out, kind of crowdsourcing the information and figuring those things out as a group. And I'd love to be able to help foster that community and bring people together in that. So anyway, so that's kind of what this podcast is going to be. So hopefully it works out. Either way, buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. Thanks for tuning in to the Tooth and Coin podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with a fellow dentist or a practice owner who could benefit. Your word of mouth helps us spread financial wisdom throughout the dental community. So until next time, keep building that thriving practice.